Seed Sewing. Welcome back. It's good to be with you all. And today we're here in my kitchen and I'm going to show you how I make soap. Now, I am not going to go into any of the chemistry or how I calculate the different ingredients that I use. I'm just going to show you the basic how you put it together. Like if I was baking a cake, here's the ingredients that I use, and this is how I bring them together to make a lovely bar of creamy, bubbly soap that will cleanse your skin and not dry it out all at the same time. So this is how I roll. You see it's kind of a mess, but everything here has a purpose. I have vinegar. If I have any spills or get any of the lye solution on me, that's what I'll use to take care of that. I have gloves to protect my hands. These are the loaves that I will be pouring the soap batter into, and that's where they'll sit and form up. I have my protective goggles. There's gloves. I have my different kinds of oils. I have coconut, lard, olive oil, shea butter, and sunflower oil. I'm not using all of these for all of my recipes, but I like to lay things out ahead of time so I don't have to keep walking back and forth, I keep all of my soap and supplies in the laundry room. My immersion blender is a must for when making soap. If you don't want to, unless you want to spend hours mixing it. A scale. This is my pot for my lye solution. Then I always have some spatulas to use. One of these handy-duty infrared thermometers. This is my lye, not mixed up yet. One of these tiny little, I'm not even sure what they're called, tiny little mixers. I use that for blending up my colorants and my essential oils. And so I'm going to show you over here now. I have the colorants. I infused my olive oil for each recipe. I infused them with the colorants. I did that last night. And so this one here is paprika and turmeric powder. My hope here is to get an orange. This one here is Brazilian purple clay, and I've only used this once before, and I didn't even get a lavender color, so I was disappointed on that. This is the second time I'm giving this a try. A lot of times the color won't show up until after the bar has set and begin to cure. So what I did on this one is I tripled the amount of clay, the Brazilian purple clay that I use, in hoping that that will make a difference. And then this one here is the colorant. What did I use for this one? French green clay. And then this last one for the colorant, I used beetroot powder. And I just discovered earlier today that I can grow beets and make my own beetroot powder. So guess what I'll be growing in my garden next year? And then the other containers that you see here are the scents for each of the 4 batches that I'm hoping to make today. And these are the essential oil mixed with kaolin clay. And kaolin clay helps the scent to stick in the batter. Essential oils are known for fading, and some of them can fade really quickly. And putting some kaolin clay, mixing that with the essential oil, helps the scent to stick around a little bit longer. And so this one here, so I pour the essential oil in a bowl and add the kaolin clay and mix it up with that handy dandy little whipper you saw here just a minute ago. And then just let it sit until I actually put the batch together. And so this one is sweet orange and clove. That's a customer favorite, is orange and clove together. This one is lavender chamomile. This is my new favorite. I really, really like this one. And it's the lowest it's the one that I have the lowest stock on. This one here ended up being some pine and some rosemary and some mint, trying to come up with a Christmas theme here. And then this last one is rosemary and spearmint. That's been really popular as well. So these are the basic tools that I use and ingredients that I use for making soap. Next step then would be to prepare the lye solution. And I'm going to do that with goat's milk. I just pulled a package out of the freezer. I bought some goat's milk a couple months ago, and I freeze it into ice cubes. I have my lye solution pitcher here, and so I'm going to turn my scale on, and I have my recipe, and I figured out my soap recipe using a tool online called Soap Calculator, and it tells me how much lye, how much water, except in this case I'm using goat's milk, and how much of each different oil that I'm using, how much needs to go into the batch. So according to my recipe here, let me set my calculator. Let's tare it, and then I want grams, and I need 508 grams of goat's milk. So I just start putting ice cubes in here until I get up to what it is that I need. $508 on the dot. Okay, so now I'm just going to set this pitcher with my frozen goat milk. I'm going to set that in the sink for a moment, and it's time to measure out the lye. Okay, so I'm going to tare out my scale, so it's set to 0. And according to my recipe here, I need 257 grams of lye. And I'm standing back from where I'm pouring the lye so that none of the dust from the lye, I can't breathe any of it. I'm just watching my scale, and I went over, so I got to pour some of this back in here. A little bit more. 258 grams, that is perfect. Recipe says 257. One of the reasons that I measure soap ingredients in grams is because grams are much more forgiving than ounces. So now I'm going to go ahead and set this lye in the sink next to my goat's milk. Okay, so the next step then, I have my goat's milk here and I have my lye. The next step is to pour the lye into the goat milk. And the lye will heat up as it reacts with water, or in this case, goat milk. And as that heating occurs, it's going to melt the goat milk. And so I'm just going to pour a little bit at a time into the pitcher, give it itself a chance to incorporate until I have it all poured in there. So let's go ahead and get started. And again, I'm standing back away from the pitcher so I don't breathe any of the fumes that is coming off of this lye as it's heating up the goat milk. And it's pretty much, you know, it's still ice cubes at this point. It takes a couple minutes for it to break down and become liquid. This is almost completely melted. I gotta be really careful there on the camera, but yeah, it's almost completely melted. So I can show you, I'll take my infrared thermometer here. And this is 91.9 degrees, which is fantastic. especially, you know, when you're using goat milk or any kind of milk, it has naturally occurring sugar in it, and that can cause the lye to heat up even more. And if you're not careful, you can have scorched milk, which means ruined soap or really no soap at all. So I'm going to leave this in the sink. It has next to no chance of being bumped or falling over here in the sink. And there's still some pieces of goat milk in here that need to melt. It's not completely melted, but I know that it will be melted by the time I'm ready to come back and use it. And we'll go on to the next step. Okay, so while those hard oils, the coconut oil and the lard, are in the microwave melting, I'm going to go ahead and get the liquid oils measured out into my big mixing container here. And I need olive oil. And so last night I infused the olive oil with the Brazilian purple clay. And how I did that was I added my clay to the olive oil that I need for this particular recipe. And then I set it in a pan of simmering water for several hours, and that helps the clay to infuse into the oil. So I've already measured this oil out. I did that last night before I began the infusion. So all I'm going to do now is pour this oil through my strainer. That way any of the clay any big chunks of the clay don't end up in my soap. The little pieces that you saw go in are absolutely fine. They're going to mix up into the clay, but I can see here in my jar there's some big chunks in there, and I definitely don't want those in my soap. So let's see. Yeah, no. Okay, so I'll just set this back here now. And the next oil that I need, so that was my olive oil. Now I need sunflower oil, and I need 127 grams. So I'm going to tare my scale. Sunflower oil. Okay, that's my sunflower oil. And if you haven't seen, I'm over here checking off my ingredients on my recipe as I use them. That way I know that I've incorporated everything that I need to, and I'm not forgetting something. Into the container with my liquid oils. And scrape this bowl best I can. Just get as much out of here as possible. Here. It has a little bit of a dull lavender look to it. Let's take its temperature. 90.5, and let's take the temperature of the lye solution. 87.6. Wonderful. And I always record that on my recipe. 90.5 and 87.6. That way if I have any problems or any questions, that's just another detail that I can come back to. And since I'm going to be working with the lye solution again, I'm going to put my gloves and goggles back on in the process. So I'm going to grab my lye solution, and when I pour this in, I always try to pour it down the handle of my spatula, and the reason for that is so that I create fewer bubbles. You know, we don't want bubbles in the soap, we want the soap to create bubbles. So I'm not always successful at that. I don't have the best hand-eye coordination. there's our lye solution. Pour it in there. I'll set this back in the sink for my next batch of soap. And I'm just simply going to give it a stir right now. Begin to incorporate them together. All right, and now we'll start to use the immersion blender. And you'll be able to see this batter change color as it becomes saponified. The first thing I'm going to do with my immersion blender is tap it on the bottom a few times to release any air bubbles that might have gotten trapped underneath it when I set it inside. Last thing I want to happen is for this to splash back on me. And so here we go. I'm probably going to do this for 30 seconds to a minute, and I'll probably end up speeding up the video so you don't have to watch the whole thing. Now, I don't know how well you can see it on video. I'm starting to see some of the soap saponify. I'm starting to get a lighter color down here in my base, and it's important to get that mixed in with my spatula so that the soap matter is all mixed together and not clumpy or in, you know, part lye solution, part oils. Just the tiniest bit of trace, which is great. So when you're adding a scent to your soap batter, you want to be thoughtful about adding it, because a lot of scents can speed up trace. In other words, it can cause the batter to set up really quickly. Other scents do that, but very mildly. Some scents are in between. Some scents don't affect trace at all. And the reason that's important is because I still need this to be fluid enough to pour into my molds here in just a couple minutes. So I want it to be at some sort of a trace before I put the scent in, because then I know that this has begun the saponification process, but I don't want it to be too far down the road, because then it could set up quickly and I would have really clumpy batter to pour into my molds. So, as I explained earlier, I have my scent, Lavender Chamomile, and Kale and Clay are here in this bowl, and let me get that all scraped out of there into my batter. Okay, go. And I'm just going to hand mix this in right now. Okay, and now I'm going to start the immersion blender again and get it a little bit further down the trace road. Okay, I want to see it have what I call medium trace, and that's not quite the consistency of pudding. If it's got to pudding, it's going to be a clumpy batter to pour. And this has got a little ways to go, so I'm going to go back at it. Almost, not quite. You know what I'm going to do? I'm going to set this washcloth underneath my mixing tub to keep the mixing tub from scooting around so much. All right, let's give this about another 15 seconds. All right, that's where we want it to be. So now at this step I need to move kind of quickly, because once the soap batter reaches that medium to medium heavy trace, it can begin to set up really quickly, and I could end up with that clumpy soap batter to pour, which I told you about a minute ago, and that has happened to me a couple times. So get as much out of there as I can, and lay that down to the side. And then I have my 2 loaves, and it's just a simple pine wooden box with a silicone mold set inside of it. And I've made the batch the size to where I should be able to fill both of these loaves. So here we go, and I set my spatula in the loaf again to try and decrease the amount of bubbles in the soap. There we go. Hope you're seeing this. Not real happy with the color so far. It's just kind of a off-white beige color, but I know sometimes clays and other colorants will change color as they set up, so maybe when I come to unmold this tomorrow, maybe I'll be surprised and I'll have a more actual lavender color to it. So I try and get as much of the soap batter out of my bowl here that I possibly can. I like to waste any. Scrape my bowl down one more time. The next thing I need to do is to tap these molds on the counter to release any air bubbles or air pockets that might be in the batter. You see sometimes some of them come to the top, others that are there, they will pop. There we go. Now this one. Yep, a couple of them came up that time. There's a couple on the top that I still want to break. There's one over here that's being stubborn. I think I'm going to have to pop it myself. Next thing I'm going to do is take a paper towel and wipe off the soap that I spilled on the edge of the mold. That makes it safe for me to carry. Okay, so it's the next day. It's probably been close to 20 hours since I put these 2 loaves of lavender chamomile soap in the freezer. I just now pulled them out of the freezer and going to see whether or not they will come out of the molds. Sometimes straight out of the freezer they can be a little bit stubborn. So I just pull the sides away so they'll be loosened up, come out a little bit easier. I have a cutting board here with parchment paper on it to put the loaves on, and then I just press on the bottom to loosen it. And hopefully they will come out. Doesn't want to. Let's try the other end. So another option is to actually try and peel the silicone loaf off. Look, that's working really well. Good deal. we go. There's a loaf of soap, and this will end up being 10 bars of soap. I can't cut this right now because it's frozen. I'm gonna have to wait for it to warm up a little bit, but I wanted you to see what the unmolding step looked like, and then I can come back a little bit later, maybe today or maybe even tomorrow, and show you how I cut the soap. I actually have a soap slicer that I use, so all of my bars are uniform size. There we go. Here's the second loaf. Oh, it smells lovely. It just smells lovely. So I'll be back with you a little bit later to get these cut. Hi friends, welcome back. It is the next day. So to be clear, I made the soap on Sunday. I unmolded it yesterday, Monday, and today, Tuesday, I'm going to slice these loaves up in my special cutter here. I will show you that, and you'll get to see what the process looks like. So here we go. These are the 2 loaves of Lavender Chamomile, and this is my handy dandy soap slicer, and these are guitar strings, and they slice through the soap very nicely. You're probably wondering why I didn't slice the loaves yesterday after I unmolded them, and it was because the loaves were too soft and they just would not have cut nicely, and sometimes that happens, you know, temperature, humidity, lots of different things can affect these bars of soaps as they're curing. So this is all I do. I just set the loaf in the slicer here, try and get it evened up on both sides, and bring the slicer down. And sometimes it's a little arm work to get that done, and that's a beautiful sound to hear. And here's the first bar out of this loaf, Lavender Chamomile. Nothing unusual there to see. And so what needs to happen next is these bars what do you want to say? I will pare them or trim them off just a little bit. Let me show you what I mean. So right now these bars are square around all of the edges, and there's some hard right angles. And so what I do, and what a lot of soap makers do, is they just take a vegetable peeler and peel off the edges so they're not so hard, make the corners a little bit softer, and it also just makes the bar a little bit more attractive. So that's what I do, and I will do that on each of these bars here. Kind of trim them up a little bit. Just makes them look nicer, makes them a little more comfortable in the hand, gets rid of some of the jagged edges from sitting in the loaf. And then the next step in the soap making process is to let the bars cure. And what that means is it's totally hands off for, well, I shouldn't say totally hands off. It's pretty much hands off for me. So right now there's a lot of water, water that needs to evaporate in these bars of soap. I could use this soap, you could use this soap straight away today, but basically it would melt in the shower very quickly because of all of the water that is still in this soap. And so by allowing the bars to sit for a minimum of 3 weeks, 4 to 5 weeks is best, that excess water has the opportunity to evaporate, and the bars will last much longer. They'll become harder, and they won't just melt in your shower when they're sitting there in the soap dish. And in case you didn't know, homemade soap works best, works best, lasts longer if you can set it in some place where the water doesn't hit it directly as you're bathing. Maybe somebody else uses a different type of soap in the same shower that you use. And a slotted soap dish is a really good idea for any soap that is handmade as well, because that allows the soap to drain and to have a chance to dry out between showers, and that is a good thing also as far as helping your bar to last as long as it possibly can. So I'm not going to bore you with trimming up all of these bars of soap, but I just wanted to share with you the process of how I make soap, and this was it, pretty much in a nutshell. Not a whole lot of detail that went into it, although this video is a little bit more lengthy than most videos that I make. I know several of you have asked me about this, and so I just give you the opportunity to see how that's done. Thinking about next batches of soap that I be making, what scents would you like to see? What are your favorite? Do you like the citrus scents? Do you prefer something a little more woodsy, maybe something more flowery? Let me know in the comments below, and I will take that into consideration as I'm making my next sets of soaps. So as always, friends, thank you so much for watching. Remember that if you have faith as small as a mountain seed, mustards can be moved. Thank you, and God bless. Thank you so much, friends, for watching. I've enjoyed being with you again and sharing this process with you. Please remember, if you have faith as small as a mustard seed, mountains can be moved. Thank you, and God bless.